All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel now. We got a very, very, very interesting video here on the Grunge channel. Shout out to them. Make sure you guys are subscribed. We got rock star interviews that went terribly wrong. I'm just trying to see who's in here. I know they got John Lennon, but I want to see what other people are in here and how many of these interviews and how terrible did they go? You know, is it just some clickbait, or were these like really, really bad? Again, appreciate you guys coming over. Shout out to all the good humans. Link is always in the description, man. We ain't gonna waste no more time. Let's jump right into it.
John Lennon comparing the Beatles to Jesus was far from the most outrageous thing that Fab Four ever said. From insulting entire countries to bands breaking up right before our eyes, these are rock star interviews that hit all the wrong notes. In 2013, Lisa Kennedy Montgomery, known professionally as Kennedy, was backstage at Lollapalooza, where she interviewed DJ Diplo and other members of the electronic dance group Major Lazer. The encounter became instantly legendary for becoming awkward and oddly combative. Kennedy insulted her interview subjects repeatedly, informing them that she could have them murdered and mocking Diplo for accepting $400,000 to perform in Dubai. And when she asked who the most annoying person they've ever worked with was, Diplo snapped.
Oh, Diplo.
How are you?
An article published on Complex speculated that Kennedy engineered this viral moment to boost the sales of her just-released book, The Kennedy Chronicles, the golden age of MTV through rose-colored glasses.
That's so crazy when people do that, man. You know, what they say, any publicity is good publicity. You know, it's like it'd be drama, and then you'd be like, did this person got an album coming out? Or just something, man. Something. It's always something. My goodness.
She did, after all, refer to EDM as EMD, which sounds like the sort of on-purpose mistake you make just to get a reaction out of someone.
Yeah.
Whatever the truth behind it, this interview has taken its place as one of the most uncomfortable ever. In 1995, Madonna was well established as one of the biggest pop stars in the world, while Courtney Love was a major force in rock music after the release of her band Hole's second album, Live Through This. When MTV's Kurt Loder sat down with Madonna after the MTV Music Video Awards that year, it went off the rails in spectacular fashion. Her poise was tested early on when a clearly drunk Love began throwing things at her, prompting Madonna to say,
"Come on, Courtney Love is in dire need of attention right now."
Loder invited Love to join them, and she then proceeded to ramble on drunkenly as Madonna's soul basically left her body. Love accused Madonna of being rude to her on a prior occasion, apparently believing this justified her interruption. Madonna, as you might imagine, did not agree. Love then got on her knees to tell Madonna that she and her late husband Kurt Cobain loved her film, Truth or Dare. This freaked Madonna out completely, as she then signaled to her team that she was done, leaving Loder to salvage this fiasco on his own.
Look at his face.
In December 1976, Queen was scheduled to appear on Bill Grundy's Today Show on British TV. But then lead singer Freddie Mercury came down with a toothache and canceled. So in the scramble to fill the spot, the band's record company offered up a new act, the Sex Pistols. To say this interview did not go well is an understatement.
Oh, wow.
For 2.5 minutes, the band and their entourage managed to launch themselves into controversial fame, while also basically ruining Grundy's career. First off, he introduced the band with an off-the-cuff quip he would come to regret.
They are as drunk as I am.
Grundy was simultaneously disinterested in the band and determined to mock them, eventually prompting lead singer Johnny Rotten to utter an expletive live on air. The host also flirted with some of the women in the entourage and made the mistake of asking the band to say something outrageous, which prompted even more cursing. The Pistols got the publicity they wanted, but things didn't work out for Grundy, as he was suspended for 2 weeks and then his show was canceled.
See?
Ian Molly Meldrum is a bit of a legend in Australia, and his pioneering music show Countdown is a big part of his legacy. In 1979, Iggy Pop was booked to be interviewed by Meldrum and then perform his song, I'm Bored. But then it all went terribly wrong. The singer was an irritating mess right from the get-go, as he began by interrupting the host's introduction.
One album.
Hiya, Dogface.
Iggy, how are you, mate?
The rocker then proceeded to jump around and make strange noises. He was incoherent and made exactly zero effort to respond to any questions. Then when he performed, it was just as bad, as he generally exhibited contempt for the entire experience. It's easy to assume that Iggy was under the influence of a few substances, but he's claimed that intense jet lag, combined with the feeling of being tricked by his record label, led to the disaster. He was exhausted from the trip, and he was upset to discover upon his arrival that he wouldn't be performing live anywhere as he'd expected. As he recalled in 2016, while Meldrum was trying to interview him, he said to himself, "Do not let yourself take this guy seriously." Have you ever heard of a band called the Boxmasters? Chances are slim unless you're a big fan of their founder, actor Billy Bob Thornton. There's nothing wrong with using your fame and fortune to pursue your other artistic dreams. But Thornton takes things a bit further by insisting that journalists pretend that his acting career has nothing to do with his band. Canadian radio host Gian Gameshi found that out the hard way in 2009 when he dared to bring up Thornton's acting career. Instead of being classy about it, Thornton proceeded to respond with profanity, non sequiturs, and generally rude behavior. Worst of all, he decided to insult everyone in Canada, calling them mashed potatoes with no gravy.
We got some gravy up here as well.
Yeah, you do, actually, on a lot of things.
Despite this evidence to the contrary, Thornton is generally regarded as a good interview subject, so rumors flew that he wasn't entirely sober, though his management team denied that.
I don't know what's worse. Mashed potatoes with no gravy or potato salad with raisins. Although it do be some mashed potatoes that be already flavored, but I gotta have that gravy in it. That man said, "Yup, mashed potatoes with no." Sheesh. I gotta use that one.
One thing is certain, though. Thornton felt no remorse, even after having to cancel some concerts in the wake of the appearance. He appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live shortly afterward and shrugged off the criticism. He also admitted that he'd pulled similar stunts when interviewers ignored his instructions and dismissed the viral nature of the video by insisting it gave humpback geeks all over the world something to do for a couple days. In 1979, legendary rock band Kiss were on top of the world. They were an unusually hardworking group, grinding through a grueling tour schedule for years until their 1975 live album Alive broke through in a big way. From 75 to 79, they kept up that punishing pace, with 5 studio albums, more touring, and a solo album for all 4 members. But there were big problems simmering underneath the surface. Kiss had oversaturated the market, and they were seeing declining ticket and album sales. Plus, the band members pretty much all hated each other. Everything came to a head when the band appeared in full makeup on the talk show Tomorrow, hosted by Tom Snyder. In his book, Makeup to Breakup, drummer Pete Criss admits that he and guitarist Ace Frehley got roaring drunk backstage. This prompted Frehley to take over the whole interview, cackling and cracking joke after joke, which clearly annoyed Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley to no end. Stanley even later said, "It may seem funny that someone's drunk, but the fact is, the root of it was, I believe, a contempt and lack of respect for the audience and the fans." As Criss put it in his book, the band had settled into 2 opposing camps, and the friction between them during this interview was a sign of things to come. By 1982, both Criss and Frehley were out of the band. Rockstar interviews can be fawning, superficial affairs designed solely to promote a new album or tour. So anytime an interviewer gets a little aggressive, it can be exciting. But in 1997, British talk show host Clive Anderson went a little too far while chatting with the Gibb brothers of the legendary Bee Gees. The group was promoting a new album and were reportedly told that Anderson was a big fan. But the host's strategy for the interview was more insulting than provocative.
Damn.
He opened up by suggesting that they were bad songwriters, and then proceeded to mock their famous high-pitched falsettos.
Because I didn't realize you were real brothers. I think you were sisters, actually. Yes. Well, I thought we were coming to that.
Anderson also called the band Tossers, which is British slang for a stupid person, and claimed not to remember some of their hit songs. Barry Gibb later recalled the experience in a 2016 interview with The Sun by explaining, "It was just a barrage of inferred insults." The group tried to play along, but eventually, Barry had enough and simply walked off.
Yeah, get on up
His
out of
brothers
there.
followed him a moment later, leaving Anderson a bit flustered. The interview was reportedly a last-minute addition to the show, and
It's funny how they try to act all surprised, like the hosts, as if you're not sitting there offending someone. You know, you got to have thick skin in the business, you do, but, you know, there's a level of disrespect that you're not supposed to tolerate, right? So, hey, for the hosts that be getting fired and all that type of stuff, like, y'all know what y'all be doing. They know they be trying to aggravate and just, because it's like, it's all about going viral, you know. The more upset they get, people go, oh man, did you see the Bee Gees walk, did you see the Bee Gees walk off the show? And that's what people want to see. But in the long term, you think it's going to help your career, but it's actually hurting you, because then you're going to get other celebrities, artists that don't want to come to your show because they know how you are. So I don't know, man. I just don't understand the logic behind some of these hosts asking these like dumb, stupid, irritating, disrespectful type questions. You know, you can sit up there and have a nice, cool conversation. I'm sure the crowd and the fans would enjoy that too, but they always feel like they need to one up. Like, my show was the one who made the Bee Gees walk. It's crazy.
Anderson came to regret his jokes. In 2020, he admitted to The Spectator that he made the mistake of not realizing the Bee Gees wouldn't find his humor entertaining.
See?
In 1996, Weezer were following up on their hugely successful debut album with their sophomore effort, Pinkerton, so lead singer Rivers Cuomo dutifully hit the promotional circuit. While touring Australia, he stopped by a show called Recovery, hosted by Dylan Lewis. It started off awkward and only got worse. To begin with, Lewis got Cuomo's name wrong, calling him River Weezer. He couldn't remember his actual last name, so he just improvised, thinking he could get away with it. But he didn't. Cuomo was visibly irritated and more or less refused to engage throughout the rest of the interview. The rocker claimed that he was jet-lagged, but as Lewis insisted to Junkie in 2019, he wasn't jet-lagged, he was wasted. I'm sorry, but he was. But it was Lewis who was hit with most of the blowback over the interview, with Weezer's Australian fans blaming him for the band's lack of touring down under. Lewis doesn't exactly like being constantly reminded of the interview, as he told Junkie that he wished it could be scrubbed from the internet.
Well,
The Beatles were famous like no group ever before them. They handled it remarkably well for a while. That is until 1966, when they gave a series of interviews that appeared in the London Evening Standard, in which John Lennon quipped, "We're more popular than Jesus now.
oh, yeah.
I don't know which will go first, rock and
remember
roll
this
or
one.
Christianity." The quote was basically ignored at first, but a few months later, it sparked some controversy when a magazine called Datebook used the Jesus quote on its cover. Afterward, there were protests in the American South, public destruction of Beatles records and merchandise, and even death threats. The band eventually organized a press conference where a visibly shaken Lennon tried to explain the nuance of his point, which he said was more about the state of organized religion than the greatness of the Beatles.
It's not, I never meant what people think I meant by it. I'm still sorry I opened my mouth.
What's remarkable about this disastrous series of interviews is that Lennon's line about Jesus is just one of their awful quotes. Paul McCartney called the United States a lousy country and used a racial slur. Ringo Starr referred to his much younger wife more or less as property, and Lennon...
How did you guys feel about that? Because I know, is it one of them things like, I know he said the quote, but you still can't deny the music, the greatness? Was it one of those type of things? Because, today you say stuff like that. People are, I can't stand this band. You know what I mean? How did y'all feel about that back then that y'all didn't care? People seem to care a lot today. Oh, yes.
even said, "I couldn't stand ugly people even when I was 5. Lots of the ugly ones are foreign, aren't they?" Overall, the band was probably pretty lucky that the Jesus quote is the only one anyone remembers. James Brown was an electrifying performer, but his life off stage was far from perfect. He reportedly regularly beat his wife, and he was raised by a violent father himself. He also spent time in prison, fathered multiple illegitimate children he took no interest in, and struggled with addiction. This all came to a head for Brown in 1988, when he was arrested and charged with attacking his wife with a lead pipe and firing a gun at her. At this point in his life, it's believed that he was addicted to PCP. This is a drug that's notorious for making its users' behavior unpredictable, which is exactly how Brown's interview with CNN from April of that year could be accurately described. Many people reportedly believed that Brown was high during the appearance, and it's not hard to see why, as he bursted into song multiple times, and at one point went into detail about his sexual prowess.
Yeah, man. I've been interviewed. I've been talked to. It's just a certain level of respect that you look for. 'Cause, you know, it's so many questions people can ask you. So many things they can say. But when they again, it's part of, like, I know, like in sports, how players be going off. I know it's part of the job to be interviewed and all that, but man, some questions though, and some statements people make, especially when they know, or if they don't have all the facts and stuff, that's what I guess I'm trying to say. That'd be crazy. Be crazy. But again, appreciate you guys coming over, watching, commenting, subscribing, sharing, all that good stuff, man. You guys are greatly appreciated. Don't know how many of you have seen all these. If you have and you're watching again with me, I thank you. I thank you. I thank you. All right. Peace out.